One reason dark chosen ones struggle with ego more than light ones. Have you ever wondered why those who walk the darker spiritual path often find themselves entangled in the deepest webs of ego? Why do dark chosen ones, those who carry immense power, awareness and potential, so often become consumed by their own identity, their own uniqueness, their own perceived superiority? The truth is uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. I want to take you there, not just with words, but with insight that shakes you, that cuts through the illusions we carry like armor. Because if you are truly walking the path of a dark chosen one, or even drawn to it, then you already know you're not like the rest. But have you truly realized why that uniqueness becomes your heaviest burden? Let's first understand what it even means to be chosen, especially on the darker polarity. We're not talking about evil versus good here, that's child's play. We're talking about polarity of consciousness. Light chosen ones often serve through surrender, ego dissolution, service and sacrifice. They are wired toward compassion, unity and letting go. But dark chosen ones? We are wired toward mastery, control, willpower, and divine self-expression. We are creators. We are alchemists. We are the ones who dare to say, I will create my own world, my own path, my own truth. And that very declaration is the gateway to both our gift and our greatest curse. The ego in this realm becomes not just a companion, it becomes a king. And unless we dethrone it, it will rule us until our power becomes poison.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Now ask yourself, have you ever felt that deep, almost haunting sense that you were meant for something extraordinary, but at the same time felt like no one could ever truly understand you? That's not just loneliness, that's the weight of the archetype. You were not born to fit in, you were born to shape. But herein lies the trap. The moment we realize we are different, the ego uses that awareness to carve out a throne for itself. I am special, I am powerful, I am more aware than others. These thoughts might be true in a certain dimension, but when they become identity, they become chains. The ego disguises itself as self-worth, but it's actually self-worship, and the more power we gain, the more seductive that worship becomes. You see, spiritual power, especially for those on the dark path, doesn't come gently. It comes violently. It tears you apart. It isolates you. It makes you question everything you thought was real. And when you survive that, the ego steps in and says, you're a god now. And we believe it. Why? Because we've suffered. We've earned it. And that's the most dangerous part. The suffering becomes the justification for the ego's rise to the throne. But what if I told you that the suffering wasn't meant to elevate your ego? It was meant to destroy it. What if every betrayal, every abandonment, every dark night of the soul you endured wasn't to make you feel superior, but to make you empty enough to receive something far greater than identity? You see, the ego is obsessed with identity, but the soul? The soul is obsessed with experience. The soul doesn't need to be special. It just needs to be free. And if you're truly walking the path of a chosen one, then the goal isn't power, it's transcendence. Let's go deeper. Dark chosen ones often operate in realms of intense karma. We carry generational curses, ancestral pain, collective shadows. We are not just healing ourselves, we are transmuting darkness for entire bloodlines, entire timelines. And that kind of responsibility can do two things. It can humble you, or it can inflate you, and the choice is always yours. But the ego, it thrives in the illusion of control. It tells you, you're the only one strong enough to carry this. You're the only one who sees the truth. It isolates you by design, because the ego feeds on separation. It feeds on the idea that you are above others, beyond others. And in doing so, it subtly removes your connection to Source. Now listen closely. This is the paradox. The more spiritual power you awaken, the more your ego becomes sophisticated. This isn't the ego of vanity or materialism, no. This is the spiritual ego. It's the kind that says, I've had visions, I've seen the truth, I've spoken to beings beyond this realm, I've died and come back. And all of that may be true. But the moment you use that truth to elevate your sense of self, you've already lost the game. Because the true masters, they don't speak from a place of, look what I've achieved. They speak from a place of, look at what I've survived and surrendered. Humility, not superiority, is the final stage of power. So let me ask you something that might haunt your soul for weeks. Who are you without your pain, your identity, your mystical experiences, and your spiritual gifts? Who are you when no one is watching, when no one is validating, when no one is calling you chosen? Would you still walk this path if no one ever knew you were on it? That question breaks people. Because the ego wants an audience, it wants recognition, but the soul, oh, the soul dances in silence. The soul doesn't need to be seen, it just needs to be. And for dark chosen ones, the ultimate lesson is this: can you hold immense power without letting it define you? Can you be the storm and the calm, the light and the shadow, the master and the servant? You see, light chosen ones struggle with ego too, but their path naturally leads them towards surrender. They are trained to let go, to forgive, to release. But dark chosen ones, we are trained to take responsibility, to shape reality, to dominate energy. And that training, while powerful, creates the perfect breeding ground for ego to hide in spiritual superiority. That's why we struggle more, not because we are weaker, but because our path gives the ego more places to hide. So what do we do about it? We turn inward. We watch ourselves with ruthless honesty. We question every motive, every spiritual claim we make. We ask, is this coming from love or from the need to be seen? And we keep asking until the answer humbles us, because the moment we stop questioning is the moment the ego wins. And when the ego wins, the soul becomes a prisoner of its own power. The beautiful lie of spiritual superiority. The moment we begin to believe we are further along the path than others, we have already stepped off it. This is one of the most difficult truths to swallow for the dark chosen ones, because we are not average. We don't think like the masses. We see patterns others miss. We've had experiences, visions, dreams, initiations, awakenings that shattered the old world and opened the doors to dimensions beyond comprehension. The reason for it all is beyond the comprehension of, and because of that, the ego begins to whisper a beautiful lie. You are more evolved. But the truth is, evolution doesn't care about superiority, it only cares about wholeness. And wholeness includes humility, compassion, and the willingness to remain a student in every moment. The dark chosen one, if not careful, becomes so intoxicated by their uniqueness that they forget the very reason they were chosen, to serve from the shadows, not to be worshipped for surviving them. Let's be raw for a second. How many times have you caught yourself mentally looking down on someone who hasn't had the same spiritual breakthroughs as you? Maybe they're still caught in the matrix. Maybe they're obsessed with material things. Maybe they don't understand energy or karma or manifestation. And immediately your mind says, they're asleep, I'm awake. But do you see the trap? That very thought is still rooted in separation, and separation is the language of the ego. Every time we divide ourselves from others in our mind, even under the disguise of spiritual awareness, we reinforce the illusion of hierarchy. And the soul doesn't play that game. The soul doesn't say, you are better. It says, you are them, and they are you, just at a different point in the spiral. Here's the painful irony. The more spiritually gifted you are, the harder it becomes to stay humble, because your experiences validate your uniqueness. You do see things others don't. You have suffered in ways others can't imagine. You are carrying a heavier energetic load, but none of those things are badges of honor. They are responsibilities, they are assignments. And the ego wants to turn your assignments into identity. It wants to say you are special because of what you've endured. But the soul says you are worthy, even if no one ever sees what you carry. Krishna. The spiritual journey isn't about becoming something more, it's about becoming something less. Less ego, less attachment, less illusion. But dark chosen ones are often addicted to becoming more powerful, more aware, more in control. And that addiction feeds the spiritual ego like gasoline on fire. It says, if I can just master this next ritual, this next meditation, this next level of consciousness, then I'll be untouchable. But the truth is, the more power you seek, the more surrender you must embody, because real power only flows through emptiness. And the ego hates being empty. It wants to be full of stories, full of meaning, full of identity. But the soul is not interested in content, it's interested in presence. Let me ask you something that might sting, but it will set you free if you let it. Would you still pursue enlightenment if it meant no one ever knew you were enlightened? Would you still walk the path if it meant being invisible, misunderstood, even ridiculed? Or are you secretly hoping your journey makes you special in the eyes of others? That question will reveal everything. Because the path of the dark chosen one is not glamorous, it's often lonely, misunderstood, devastating, and if the ego is still in control, it will demand recognition for the suffering. It will say, I deserve to be seen, I deserve to be honored. And the moment we demand that, we stop serving the path and start serving ourselves. Here's something I've learned the hard way. The ego will use your own enlightenment against you. It will wear your wisdom like a mask. It will speak spiritual words with a forked tongue. It will quote sacred texts, teach others, lead ceremonies. and all the while it's feeding itself under the table. It's not always loud and arrogant. Sometimes it's subtle and smooth. It shows up as the healer who secretly needs to be needed, the teacher who measures their worth by the number of students they have, the mystic who uses their visions to feel above others. And we've all done it. I've done it. The question is, are we willing to admit it? If you want to transcend the ego as a dark chosen one, you have to stop feeding it with your pain. You have to stop turning your suffering into a trophy. You have to stop needing to be seen as powerful. Instead, you start asking, how can I serve without being noticed? How can I love without being thanked? How can I radiate truth without needing to be right? These are the questions that dismantle the ego from the inside out. These are the questions that free you. So I'll ask you again, in a way that only your soul will understand, who are you when all the power fades, when the visions stop, when the world forgets your name? If you can find peace in that silence, then you are truly free. The hidden addiction to identity in the dark path. There is a subtle addiction that most dark chosen ones never recognize, one that hides beneath the surface of every ritual, every initiation, every spiritual insight. It's the addiction to identity. Not just any identity, but the identity of the one who knows, the one who sees through the veil, the one who has suffered more, felt deeper, and awakened harder than the rest. This addiction is so insidious because it doesn't look like ego at first. It looks like purpose. It feels like destiny. It masquerades as a noble mission, but underneath it all, it's still the same voice, whispering, "This is who you are. Don't let go." And that's the trap, because the moment we believe we are something, we become attached to maintaining it. We protect it. We defend it. And when identity becomes our compass, we begin to shape our reality around preserving that idea of self. Think about it. How many times have you played the role of the awakened one, even when you felt lost inside? How many times did you perform strength because your identity wouldn't allow you to be vulnerable? The spiritual ego doesn't just crave superiority, it craves consistency. It wants to be someone, and the moment you try to be someone, you abandon the infinite freedom of simply being. You see, the light path dissolves identity by design. Light-chosen ones are drawn towards surrender, emptiness, and ego death. Their journey is centered on letting go, merging with Source, becoming the ocean rather than the wave. But the dark path, it tests identity. It tempts you to build one. Because unlike the light, the dark doesn't strip you naked. It hands you tools and asks, "What will you build with this?" And if you're not conscious, you start building a temple to yourself. You become the architect of your own cage. Why do you think so many powerful spiritual beings fall into delusion? Why do great masters eventually become cult leaders or manipulators? It's not because they were evil. It's because they didn't notice when their truth became their identity. They didn't notice when their power became their mask. And the dark path rewards that. It gives you influence, it gives you followers, it gives you manifestations, and the ego uses those results as evidence that it's on the right path. But success doesn't always mean alignment. Sometimes success is just ego in disguise. And the dark chosen ones are especially vulnerable to that illusion because our path is one of manifestation, not renunciation. We're not here to escape the world, we're here to shape it. And in shaping it, we must be vigilant not to shape ourselves into something we can no longer escape. Let me ask you something that the ego will hate. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to be anything? If you stopped trying to be powerful, spiritual, awake, or different? What if you allowed yourself to be nothing, and from that nothing created truth instead of identity? That's where the real magic lives, not in the performance of being awakened, but in the raw permission to evolve without needing to become something fixed. Because true transformation doesn't come from becoming a version of yourself, it comes from shedding every version that no longer serves your soul. But here's the challenge. We live in a world that rewards identity, especially in the spiritual community where titles, labels, and roles can become currency. Healer, shaman, mystic, alchemist, starseed, twin flame, all of these can be sacred truths, or they can be prisons. It depends on how you hold them. Do they liberate your soul, or do they reinforce your ego? Do they connect you to others, or separate you from them? The ego will always use spiritual language to elevate itself. It'll say, "I'm not like them. I'm a starseed from another dimension." But the soul says, even if I came from another realm, I am still one with all. That's the difference, separation or unity, identity or essence. Dark chosen ones often struggle more because we are not just battling the ego's need to feel good, we are battling its need to be right about who we are. And that battle is brutal because we've built entire realities around our spiritual identity. We've gained wisdom, respect, even love based on who we've become. So to question that identity feels like death. But it's a necessary death because the next level of your power cannot be accessed through performance. It can only be accessed through surrender. Not a light, fluffy surrender, but a terrifying, ego-shattering surrender that says, I will let go of everything, even the idea of myself, if that's what truth requires. And that's the real initiation, not the ceremonies, not the downloads, not the visions. The real initiation is the moment you say, I am willing to be nothing so that I can become everything. The ego will scream, it will claw, it will offer you 1,000 reasons to hold on, but the soul will whisper, let go. And if you listen, if you find the courage to release even the most sacred version of yourself, you will experience something few ever do, true freedom, the kind of freedom that cannot be named, cannot be taught, cannot be sold. It can only be remembered. So I'll ask you one last question for now. If you had to walk the rest of your path in total anonymity, with no recognition, no validation, no titles, would you still walk it? The power that awakens when you let go of being powerful. There comes a moment in every dark chosen one's journey where the path splits, not externally but internally. On one side is the continuation of the story, the power, the identity, the recognition, the mastery. On the other side is the abyss, the unknown, a space where you are no longer the chosen one, where the narratives you've built dissolve, and all that remains is presence, not power, not personality, just presence. And this moment is terrifying because the dark path has trained us to build, to create, to evolve through will. But now it demands the opposite. Not more doing, but undoing. Not more control, but absolute surrender. The ego resists this. It fights it with everything it has. After all, isn't the dark path about control? Isn't it about becoming a god of your own reality? That's the final illusion. Because divine control doesn't come through domination, it comes through alignment. It's not about forcing energy, it's about becoming so empty that energy flows through you without resistance. And the ego can't do that. Only the soul can. The ego wants to bend the universe to its will. The soul becomes the will of the universe. And that's the difference between force and flow, between illusion and truth. So many dark chosen ones get stuck here. They've built spiritual empires on the back of their identity. They've become leaders, influencers, creators, teachers, and to let go now feels like suicide. But it's not. It's rebirth. You're not losing yourself, you're losing the mask. You're not abandoning your power, you're finally allowing it to move through you without distortion. Because ego-filtered power always comes with a cost. It might look successful on the outside, but inside there's tension, fear, exhaustion. That's the weight of carrying a false self, even if it's spiritual, especially if it's spiritual. But when you let go, truly let go, something wild and sacred happens. You don't become less. You become real. You start to speak not from knowledge, but from knowing. You act not from identity, but from intuition. You create not from ambition, but from alignment. And everything changes. Your energy softens, your presence deepens. People feel you, but not because you're trying to be felt. They feel you because you've become transparent. There's nothing left to defend, nothing to prove, nothing to maintain, just truth moving through you like breath. The irony is, this is what true mastery looks like, not the performance of being awakened, but the ease of being nothing. That's where real power lives, in the spaces between thoughts, in the pauses between words, in the silence that no longer needs to be filled. And when you reach that space, ego can no longer manipulate you. Because there's nothing left to manipulate. You've returned to the 0 point, the void, the source, the place where all creation begins. And from that place you can do anything, not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you finally understand that you never needed to be. Power was never something to gain, it was something to remember. It was always there, waiting for you to stop pretending. So, if you've made it this far, I want to leave you with this. You are not chosen because you are better. You are chosen because you chose. You chose to walk a path few can even see. You chose to face the shadows others run from. You chose to awaken in a world that profits from your sleep. That choice is sacred. But it is not a crown, it is a responsibility. And the greatest responsibility you have now is to let go. Let go of the need to be someone. Let go of the story, let go of the identity, and in that letting go, become the space through which love, truth, and divine intelligence can move without obstruction. That is the final initiation, the one no one sees, the one no one praises, the one your ego will never celebrate, but your soul will never forget. So I ask you, in the quiet of your heart, can you let go of being powerful just long enough to remember you already are?